All right, Renee, is it okay if I go ahead and get this party started officially?
Yes, absolutely.
All right,
Go.
cool. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And if you're watching the recording, I hope you're having a good day no matter when and where you are. We're going to have some fun today. We're going to talk about strategic planning, one of our favorite topics,
Yay!
particularly your first steps to strategic planning. So if it's new to you, you are in the right place. We're going to have some fun over the next hour or so. I'm Steven. I'm over here at Bloomerang, and I'll be moderating our discussion as always. And just some real quick housekeeping items before we get going. Just want to let you all know that we are recording this session. We will send the recording and the slides to you later on today. So if you have to leave early, or maybe you get interrupted, or you want to share with a friend or a colleague, don't worry. We'll get all that good stuff to you later today. But most importantly, please use that chat box on your Zoom screen. Ask questions, introduce yourself if you haven't already. There's a Q&A box and a chat box. We'll keep an eye on those. We're going to save some time at the end for Q&A. So don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you. We love for these sessions to be interactive. You can also send us a tweet. I'll keep an eye on that as well. But bottom line is we'd love to hear from you. If this is your first Bloomerang webinar, special welcome to you first timers. We do these webinars just about every Thursday. Renee and I were talking about how last year in 2020, we were doing like 2 or 3 sessions a week. We've gotten back to our normal schedule. Great session every week, totally free, totally educational. Today is no exception by any means. But if you've never heard of Bloomerang besides our webinars, Bloomerang is a provider of donor management software. So if you are interested in that, maybe curious about us, check us out, visit our website. There's all kinds of videos and stuff that you can interact with there if you want to learn more about us. But don't do that right now, because one of my favorites is graciously returning to our webinar series, joining us from beautiful San Francisco, Dr. Renee Rubin Ross. How's it going, Doc? You doing okay?
Oh, thank you. It's a little foggy here, but yeah, in general, beautiful.
I've heard that. Every time I talk to someone in the Bay Area, it's always foggy, and I wonder if you just say that to keep people awake.
Oh, okay. I notice it says fundraiser Chad on my thing there. But
Oh yeah, that's not you. That's
Don't worry.
Bad. I will put out your Twitter handle in the chat.
It's all good. Renee Rubin Ross. Yeah, Renee Rubin Ross.
You're going to want to follow her on Twitter, and also get involved with the Ross Collective, because she's got an awesome consulting firm, does all kinds of cool stuff. Specifically, really interested in one of the reasons why we got connected, inclusivity, DEI stuff we've been talking about a lot. Just really passionate about those topics as well, in addition to strategic planning, which you'll talk about later on. But I don't know how you make time for webinars, Renee, because you're doing all these other things. You're super involved with Cal State University. You're teaching grant writing and doing board development, and super involved in the nonprofit community there. And you've done great sessions for us in the past. So I'm really excited to hear your take on this topic. So I'm gonna pipe down. Nobody wants to hear from me. I'm gonna stop sharing, and we'll see if we can get your beautiful slides going.
Yeah, right. Great.
It's always a
Thank you for the intro. Oh my gosh, and so good to be back. Great. Can you see my screen there?
Yeah, looks like it's working.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, and let me just get this. Okay, wonderful. Oh my god. Okay, great. So let's see. Whoops. Yeah. So Stephen already said a little bit about me. Dr. Renee Rubin Ross. My firm guides leaders and organizations in strategic plans and governance processes that deepen social change, racial justice, stakeholder engagement, and community strength. I do run the Cal State East Bay Nonprofit Management Certificate Program, and I teach board development and grant writing for the program. I have actually one of my students on this call, which is fabulous. Hi, Shelton. My firm is the Ross Collective. My contact info is there. I use she, her pronouns. I identify as a white consultant, San Francisco Bay Area native, as Stephen said, mom to 2 humans and 1 dog, and spouse, pandemic baker with my 11-year-old human. That might be the subject for another webinar. And I enjoy running, walking, and playing guitar. So the challenge that I hear from a lot of clients or potential clients or nonprofit leaders is we don't have a strategic plan. And Stephen, I forgot to check in with you about the poll, but are you able to launch the poll at this point?
Yes, here we go. I'm going to try to do it.
Okay, awesome.
Yep, here we go. It should appear. There we go.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, the answers are coming in pretty
Wow, this is really interesting. So yeah, is your organization working off of a strategic plan? And why don't you have a strategic plan? Huh. Okay.
Want to give it a few more seconds and I'll go to the next question?
Yeah, I'll give it like another 20 seconds.
It's like almost everyone's voted. Good job.
Oh, awesome. All right. 5 seconds. You want to close the poll?
Yep, here we go. Okay, and then there's the results of the first one.
Great. So it looks like, is your organization working off a strategic plan? So 21% say we've never had one. About 20% know it expired, or about 30% it doesn't really apply to our current work, so it sits on the shelf. And about a third of you are saying it's a key part of our work. Great. So the good news is about a third are working off of a strategic plan, and about 2/3 are not. Okay, so second question, why don't you have a strategic plan? Can we see that one too?
Yep, here it comes.
Okay.
Here we go. Okay, here it comes. Should be there now.
Oh, okay. It's It's coming in slowly. Okay. Oh, people are voting right now. I see.
Want to give it 10 more seconds?
Okay, 10 more seconds. Think about why you do not have a strategic plan.
Okay, here come the results.
Okay, great. So yeah, so I see, it looks like about a quarter of people don't know what to do. Well, that's why you're here. We don't have the time, about 16%. We don't have the money, about 11%. And there are some other priorities. Almost 30% of you are talking about that. The last one wasn't good. We're hesitant to create a new one. Definitely something that I've heard from some nonprofit leaders. Yeah, some other people put some other ideas in the chat too. Thank you. So yeah, that people aren't able to move it forward. And some people are working off a strategic plan, a minority, about 40%. Okay, so great. Thank you for and some resistance. The board doesn't want to work on it. Thank you for the responses in the chat. I wanted to say, if you are saying you don't have a strategic plan, you're not working on one right now, you're not alone. Research shows that the majority of nonprofits are not working off a strategic plan. And I think the reasons really have to do with the ideas that all of you are mentioning here. It's not about good intentions. It's about there's some other factors involved. All right. So every time I present or teach, I like to be really clear about what we will be talking about, what the outcomes for the session are. So I wanted to share them with you at the end of this webinar. You will be able to define strategic planning. I'm going to do that pretty quickly. Identify 3 considerations for doing strategic planning now, given all the change that we've seen over the past year plus. Identify 4 steps of strategic planning, and identify 1 or 2 next steps that you can implement within the next week to do strategic planning. For anyone who's been my student or come to some of my trainings, I'm really focused on usable knowledge it's great to be inspiring, but my goal is that you have some tools that you did not have an hour before. And so I'm going to ask you this question at the end of the hour. What is the next step that you could put into place to begin to do some strategic planning? So every time I teach or present, I like to do group agreements. It's really about how do we want to be together. So my agreement with you to share some content that many nonprofit leaders find useful, and to stop periodically during the webinar to make sure that you're with me and get your thoughts. How you can benefit the most: participation is the path to learning. So the more that you're part of this webinar, chime in. It's great. And inquiry stance, we're learning together. If you have a question, please put it in the chat. Most likely someone else does too. And I encourage you to value our time together. The more that you're present, the more you'll benefit from the content being shared. Those of you on the East Coast, I know it's the end of the day, you may be tempted to send off your last few emails. But the more you can put your work aside and be here, the more you will get out of the presentation. And I wanted to say one more thing, which is that when I do teaching and training, I am always paying attention to the expressions on participants' faces. Are you nodding along? Are you confused? Do you disagree with what I've just said? So one of the challenges of a webinar format is that I cannot see your face. So I really want to encourage you to use the chat in a positive and supportive manner to ask for clarification or add your thoughts or experience to what's being shared. Everything about my approach is about the wisdom in the room, and so I want to hear from you, because I know that whatever is on your mind, you're able to add to the conversation. All right. So what is strategic planning? I'm going to do a sort of quick definition, and then we'll get more deeply into this. Strategic planning explores three key questions. So, key strategic planning questions are, and I'm gonna tell you these now, and then we're gonna go into them in a lot more depth in a little bit. Who are we in the context of our community and the environment? Who are we? So once we've figured out who we are, what do we do best and feel pulled towards? And given number one and number two, what should we do now? So the other thing I want to say about this is there's a lot of different ways of defining strategic planning. The kind of strategic planning processes that I lead are inclusive and participatory, which means that the group is consulted, the vision of the group, the energy, we kind of tap into the energy, vision, knowledge, experience of the people who will be doing the work in order to make plans. And I'll talk a lot more about that when I talk about the process. But there are some benefits, some real clear benefits of inclusive, participatory strategic planning. And they include clarity, that team members understand what we're doing. It's crystal clear what we're working on, why we're here. Alignment. We're all swimming in the same direction because we have gone through this process of coming to agreement. Also, focus. There's a sense of understanding as an organization what we do and what we don't do. Where are we going to put? Where are we putting our energy? Where are we not putting our energy? And lastly, energy. So once again, this inclusive, participatory strategic planning is as much about a list of priorities as it is about a process where people who are on the team are consulted in the planning, and then there's a sense of agreement, and this leads to an energy, to expanded energy for plans. Okay, so now that you've got the benefits of strategic planning, and something that I wanted to talk through together is, how do you figure out, should we do strategic planning now? I created this table to help you figure this out. So the first thing you want to, and I'm going to talk through it. the first thing you want to do is look at your organizational capacity. Some questions you want to ask are, do we have the energy and motivation to dig into some big questions about our organization? You got to clarify that. If I know that that some people working inside of nonprofits have been working really, really hard. There's been a lot of adapting to change, and you got to figure out, as a team, do you have the energy and motivation to put the time aside to work on some of these questions? I find it energizing but you have to figure out if you can do this kind of capacity work. And also, given what is on our plate, how important is planning? I recently worked with an immigrant support organization that had expanded their ability to serve their community during the pandemic, had significantly increased their budget and increased their staff by 50%. So their work had shifted, and they did need to do some strategic planning because they had gotten into some new areas of work. But the first thing they needed to do was onboard their staff. So it's really, before you get into whether you should be doing planning or not, you could start out by assessing your organizational capacity. Okay, second, assessing your financial stability. And some questions to ask in this area: is our organization in a place of financial stability? And also, to what extent do we have the financial resources to invest in strategic planning? As I'm going to talk about in a little bit, there may be a range of how much you would spend on strategic planning, but no matter what, even if you're going to start devoting staff time to an internal planning process, it will demand some amount of financial investment. So you want to look at that. And third, you want to assess your programmatic stability. Some questions to consider: how much have we shifted our program due to changes in the external environment? Are there significant unknowns about program delivery in the next few years? Wow, this is really extremely relevant for the moment that we're in, right? We know that certain organizations have seen increased need this year and have expanded their services and visibility. Those are the human services organizations, environmental organizations, organizations focused on justice, hospitals, health organizations, and their programs may have changed, but they also might have found some programmatic stability. But on the other hand, if you think about arts organizations, a community theater may be currently closed without the public's desire for returning, certainly to full capacity. And in that case, it's hard to make a plan for the future, and hard to do that planning without really knowing what's going to happen next with the program. And I want to, okay. So actually, I'll come back to that. So I wanted to ask you, based on what you've heard, where does your organization fit in this table? Yes, maybe. Should you do strategic planning now? Yes, maybe, no. And feel free to put something in the chat if you. Oh, okay, we got a yes. All right, so yes. Wow, maybe. Definitely yes, yes, yes. Wow. All right, we got a lot of yeses. Wow, okay, that's great. All right, so it seems that's really interesting. I will say that maybe 6 months ago or 8 months ago, I think we would have seen a lot more maybes. And what I'm seeing is now is that organizations feel like, not that we have hit a lot of change, but the waves are decreasing in height, let's say. Okay, so let's say you decide that you are in that yes or maybe area. So what happens next? So this is what I want to encourage you to do. So this is my recommendation, is that every organization you should be right-sizing your strategic planning. So if you look at this image, you may understand here that this is the three bears, right? We have the big chair for the Papa Bear, we have the middle-sized chair for the Mama Bear, and we have a little baby chair. Now, what I loved about this image is that all the chairs look equally comfortable and luxurious. There is not, each of the chairs is the right chair for the right bear. So it is the same kind of thing with strategic planning. You need to think about how much do we need to plan, how much do we need to get into the questions of strategic planning, and really right-size your process. And I'm going to talk a lot about how to do this. So just one, I'll be getting into this more, but just one thought about this. It may be that for some organizations, a really large strategic planning process would include hiring an outside facilitator, doing thank you for that. Somebody says, I love the analogy, appreciate that. Hiring an outside facilitator, spending 6 to 9 months, and reviewing all of your programs and going into a deep fiscal analysis and commissioning outside research, all of this kind of thing. But it may be that you don't need that there is a committee that could come together, and you need more of the Mama Bear strategic planning, and that's going to work, and that's going to help with all of those benefits that I mentioned before, right? The focus, the clarity, the alignment. And it may be that this is something that you can do internally, that you can internally have some reflective conversations that will help you to shift or to just deepen investment and clarity. And I'm going to go into much more detail about this. Okay, now, so going into what is strategic, so you've gotten a sense that you are either in that yes or maybe category. You are ready to do strategic planning, you see the benefits, and what does this actually involve? So these are the key strategic planning questions that I mentioned before, and I'm going to go more into them. So first of all, the first question to think about is, who are we in the context of our community and environment? Every nonprofit was formed for the benefit of the public good and to serve a certain purpose, right? Now, what happens as organizations go on through their life cycle is that often there's a kind of veering off course or getting away from the reasons for founding. But it's really, and so strategic planning is really going back to immersing yourselves, and that's the board and staff team, in what is the environment of what is the environment that we are working in, and what are the community needs. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. The least resource intensive would be to hold a reflective conversation with staff and board on changes your organization and community have experienced over the past year, right? More resource intensive would be to have board and staff members conduct surveys or interviews on changes, to share and reflect on them, to share what was learned and to reflect on this. And most resource intensive would be to commission research on changes in the external environment or the population that you serve. I think that the other thing to consider is, well, a couple of considerations. First of all, you may need to think about how much change have we actually experienced in either community needs or the environment that we are working in. And that would probably help you to understand how much data you're going to need to collect and how much this will inform whatever planning you do. Okay, yeah. So some other areas that you want to think about in this background and context work. So one of them is a fiscal analysis. What is the story that our budget tells about our work? Where are we allocating our financial resources, and what is the breakdown? Programmatic analysis. Similarly, what are our current programmatic priorities and what could use more attention? And a demographic analysis. What are the demographics of our board, staff, and clients, and what do we learn from this? For each of these areas, as you can imagine, it is possible to go into an incredible amount of depth, and then it is also possible to have to not go as deeply into these questions. Okay, so next I want to talk about values. So values are a compass. There are a lot of ways of understanding values. The way that I understand them, well, first of all, over the past year, there was a lot of talk about values, and you may have heard conversations about values-based businesses, values-based organizations. And I think this is because we did hit this moment in March 2020 where things just shut down and we couldn't act for a moment. And so the way that we figured out how to move forward was to listen to our values. And I wanted to, and when I think about this, I wanted to share the story of La Cocina, an organization that I've worked with in the past. La Cocina is a San Francisco-based nonprofit. La Cocina means kitchen, the kitchen in Spanish. Before the pandemic, La Cocina ran a multi-year incubator program to train low and very low income entrepreneurs to run their own food businesses. So, and some of these, after I think 3 to 5 years of this training in running their own businesses, some of them became, or I would say a really high percentage, opened either pop-ups or restaurants, and this is a way of helping entrepreneurs to become self-sufficient. So, what happened? The pandemic hit. Well, it did not make sense in that moment to keep running an incubator to train people to open restaurants, right? There's no restaurants that are open. So La Cocina went back to their values and their vision and revised their strategies for the time of the pandemic. And in doing some planning, what they found out was they really valued supporting the entrepreneurs in their community, and that was what they did for the past year. They raised funds to make sure that the people who had already gone through the program could continue to be self-sufficient. They've actually come out of the pandemic. We're coming out of the pandemic, and I don't know how many restaurants are open for indoor dining, but a lot of these restaurants are open for takeout now. So they're able to keep working with these entrepreneurs and keep supporting them. It's really inspiring, and it's a way that their values of self-sufficiency help them to figure out what to do. So again, what are values? Values are a process of figuring out who are we in the context of our community and environment. I see core values as deeply ingrained principles that are unique to a particular organization and are part of day-to-day interactions. So this isn't something that you're trying to be. This is really how you are together as a team. And you might not hit it every single day, but it's how you are, how you are trying to be and trying to keep getting closer to. It's sort of like the compass. Values help us to know who we are and how we want to move through change, and that's why that's one of the reasons why I find them really powerful. A couple of examples: another Bay Area organization, Asian Women's Shelter, is a domestic violence organization in the Bay Area. Their values include survivor-centeredness, non-hierarchy, and anti-oppression. And each value includes a description. I have a white paper that if you subscribe to my newsletter, or also on my blog, I describe the process of creating values, and so you can read more there. So next one is vision. So vision focuses on the future. This is what we are hoping for the future. So the simplest way of understanding this is, what future state would the world need to be in for us to know that our work was complete? Okay, what future state? So what would need to happen for us to say, wow, we're done. We don't need to be here anymore. We have done everything we need to do. So, for example, Agricultural Institute of Marin, a local organization that focuses on food and education, says, we envision a responsible food and farming system that is environmentally beneficial, economically viable, and socially just, right? If that were to happen, we would no longer need to exist. That we would be complete, and we could go on to some other work, close our briefcases, go on to some other work. And I forgot that I put this image in the corner of the three bears, because I wanted to say that for each of these questions, again, there is a way to do this in a very big way, and there's a way to do it in kind of a medium way, and in a smaller way. Yeah. Oh, and I see a comment in the chat. Arts will and should never go away. Oh, okay. That's a great, yeah, thank you. So appreciate that. And potentially you would need to think of another way to come up with a vision. What is the future state that you hope that putting this into the world will help make happen? That's probably how I would adapt it a little. Thank you for that, Jim. Okay. Okay, yeah. And I see, okay, a couple people are asking, how would we answer the question if your organization is continual and never done? So I think that you could say, what is our vision? If you feel like our work will always be there, then what is our vision for the next 3 to 5 years? What's our vision for the next 10 years? If we did everything we wanted to do, had an unlimited amount of time, money, and collaboration with other partners, what would be in existence in the world? Because it's really going back. This is really that star that you're moving towards, right? And the thing about this is to name this is to bring out the energy of the people on the team. Why are you doing this? That's a lot of vision. Why are we doing this? Okay, thank you for the questions. So mission. So now we're going from the stars down to a bullseye. So mission is more about the focus of our day-to-day work, right? So, for example, some of you may have heard of Charity Water. Charity Water is a nonprofit organization bringing clean and safe drinking water to people in developing countries. For Charity Water, they can say every single day, are we bringing clean and safe drinking water to people in developing countries, right? Are we doing the thing that we said that we would do? Okay, I see a question here from Shelton. Thank you for that. Can I clarify the difference between mission and vision? Seems like they overlap. Vision is in more of a distant future. How would we want what's the future state that would indicate that we are accomplishing our work? And mission is much more in the day-to-day. What are we working on today? They're very much connected, but mission is going to help you to figure out what to do today, and because we're starting to get into what are we doing and what do we feel pulled towards. So mission is really about what's the focus of our day-to-day work. Okay, some of the ways to a couple more. Habitat for Humanity builds strength, stability, and self-reliance through shelter. Again, if you're on the staff of Habitat for Humanity, every single day you can say, are we building strength, stability, and self-reliance through shelter? And if we're not, if we're getting distracted by something else over there, then maybe we've hit mission drift, right? And we need to realign. Similarly, Agricultural Institute of Marin, their mission is to educate, inspire, and connect communities, responsible farmers, and producers as part of a healthy, earth-friendly, equitable, local, and regional food system. So every day, the staff and board can look at each other and say, are we living out our mission, right? And this is where you go back to why it's so helpful to do this work, because you start to talk about, well, going back, as you do that prep work of looking at what your program and your finances are allocated towards, well, does it reflect our mission? I mean, that's where you start making those connections in strategic planning. And if it doesn't, what do we want to do about it? We either need to shift our mission, or we need to shift how we're allocating time and money. Okay. So, and then the last component of strategic planning, well, the last kind of high-level component are these strategic priorities. So these are really the buckets of work that move you towards your mission. And some of these may focus on program, but at least one bucket should focus on building the capacity of your organization. So some of them may be around high level around the work that you're trying to do, but usually there are at least one of these strategic priorities that focuses on your fundraising goals, or a recent client needed to work on improving the systems of their staff so that everybody was, so there was more balance. So you want to have some, and so the strategic priorities are really high level. They will not be measurable. And then from those strategic priorities, that's really where you start to create objectives. Again, I put this image in here of those chairs as a reminder that there are ways for each of these kinds of questions, that they could be really big or that they could be a lot smaller. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about in terms of strategic planning is around equity and justice. There is so much to say on this topic, and I think it really is a topic for another webinar, but I really wanted to, a lot of organizations are working on this now. How do you bring equity and justice to planning and to board governance as well? And I wanted to mention just a couple of thoughts. So equity means that the people who are closest to the problems are weighing in on the solutions. From this approach to strategic planning, which is inclusive and participatory, a strategic plan is only as good as the voices and perspectives of the people weighing in on the plans. So you need to make sure that the people who have a sense of these problems are weighing in on them. And if your process isn't set up like that, then I would say you need to adjust it so that you are making sure to have that equity focus. And the second part of this is equity it means that systems are shifted so that Black, Indigenous, or people of color who have been historically and systemically disadvantaged in terms of access to wealth, power, and education and health have the resources to enjoy full, healthy lives. And what many organizations are looking at now is how are the systems inside our organization contributing to equity, right? And if they are not, what do we need to do? And when I say systems, I mean everything from hiring to policies to any kind of systems that your organization is using. Okay. So, again, going back to, these are our key strategic planning questions. Who are we in the context of our community and environment? What do we do best and feel pulled towards? And given number one and number two, what should we do now? So who are we is really that, that collecting that context, background information. What do we do best is, and feel pulled toward, is getting into the vision and mission. And then those strategic pillars are more about what should we do now. I know that someone had asked a question, Robert, about scenario planning, and I did want to respond to that. Scenario planning is really in number one. Scenario planning would be to say, wow, we have hit a lot of instability and we have no idea what's going to happen, but how do we plan? And the response is to come up with a couple of scenarios that might help you to narrow down what's your approaches for what's going to do next, what you're going to do next. So one scenario might be, we get a lot of government funding, and so even though there are significant needs in our community, we have the funding to run all of our programs. And then you could say, okay, then we figure out what we're going to do in that case. Another scenario is our local governments are cash-strapped, and so we're going to struggle to serve communities, our community needs. And so from that, kind of looking at the scenarios, which becomes background information, you can then decrease the let's say, complexity of your planning by saying, well, there aren't really infinite number of possibilities of what's going to happen. We could probably narrow it down to a couple. Okay, so here we go. I am now sending this back to you, and I wanted to ask you, as I said I would, what in the chat, if you can share. Oh, thank you for the edit. In the chat, if you can share, what is one next step that you will take in the next week to do strategic planning? So it's always really interesting to hear what are you taking away that you might be able to do to start to put this into action? So I see clarify the mission and vision, review a current strategic plan, assemble a diverse team, have a conversation with the CEO, oh my gosh, share this information, small conversation with the group, define our who. We have strategic planning scheduled. Oh, we're having a retreat. Wow, do a SWOT analysis, have a conversation with the ED who is resistant. Feel free to send over this PowerPoint. Have the vision conversation. Yeah, and oh, there's so many good ideas here. Wow. Review current strategic plan and process. Share info with the leadership to begin the conversation. Share with the board chair. Wow, I love all this. So many good ideas. This is really, really inspiring. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Talk to the rest of the board. Talk to the ED. Get the team refocused. Yeah. And by the way, man, I want to say so many good ideas. Let's see, we have to, gosh, I almost feel like we have to send these out, Stephen, because there's a million, really, I can't even read them all, and they're going to all panelists. Maybe we can collate or something and share. So yeah, what I was going to say is that, well, Mary, yeah, I feel like we've been in a scramble, and we need to refocus on our strategic goals. I'm not, as you can tell, I'm not coming from this from a judgmental perspective. This has been a really hard year, and people are really tired. Everybody had to go remote. That was a big project. There's been a lot more work around fundraising. The positive is a lot more money has come in, but the negative was that there was a lot more fundraising, I think, that people felt that they needed to do on grants, and also individual because of increased need. And so people are so tired. And what I've been trying to share here is, how do you right size this? How do you do it in a way that's manageable? Because I'm a strategic planning geek. There are some real benefits to doing this work. So, okay, so I at this point wanted to open this up for questions. And see, Stephen, I don't know if you've been collecting some questions. Oh, and look at this. I did put some if you want to stay in touch, I put some information on this slide too. If you want to schedule a consult, I have a newsletter that I send out every other week. And if you subscribe, then you can get this white paper that I just put together that talks about the ideas in this webinar in more depth in terms of how to do some of these processes. And I would love to connect with any of you on LinkedIn. Actually, I did the last slide in here has a couple of resources for further reading. I don't know if you don't send out the slide deck though, I think, Stephen. Maybe there's a way we can.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. We'll figure something out.
Okay.
And
awesome.
shout out to that newsletter. I get that newsletter, and it's always a good read. So definitely sign up for that. Yeah. Hey, this was awesome. We got some questions, but I just want to say thanks before we get into it, because we're getting some good comments there. I know you're seeing them.
My pleasure. I just really, I'm just appreciating. I see. It's funny because there's in the chat there's all panelists and there's all panelists and attendees. And so not everyone is seeing what I like. So a lot of people wrote to all panelists, but I'm just really appreciating the fabulous participation from so many of you. So
yeah, it's always a good group. So I appreciate that as well. Well, there's a lot of questions here. If you haven't asked your question, go for it now, because we probably got about 10 minutes. There's an interesting one here. They're about halfway through the strategic plan, but realizing that maybe they need to make some changes. Maybe it got off to a bad start. Any guidance there if maybe you're in the middle of the process and you feel that maybe you need to pivot or re-examine? Have you seen that happen and be successful?
I think I have seen that happen in different ways, or I've also heard about this where I said at the beginning, sometimes people say, one of the organizations that I work with said, we have this strategic plan, but the staff wasn't consulted. And so really they have no investment in the process. And so I would say, it's funny. I did mention, in the readings, I did mention this book, Emergent Strategy, and Adrienne Marie Brown. I put it in here. It's over here. I have it right here on my desk. And it talks about how strategy really needs to emerge from the group and that's really my approach too. It needs to be small enough. So if you feel like you're starting to go down a road where the strategies that you're getting or the process that you're getting is not getting you there, then I would say take a step back, because you do want something that is going to have those benefits that I mentioned at the beginning. And so I think you could probably tell. So you may have to pause and say, this seems like it's not working. It's not getting us where we want to go. Pause, and then see what you want to do.
Makes sense. Yeah, no reason to keep chugging forward, right, if it's not working. Here's an interesting kind of brass tacks question. How long should a strategic plan be? Is there a good sweet spot for the length or size of it? Is this like a 50-page tome? Is shorter better? Or does it depend?
Yeah, I think I think that you should be able to create a visual of some of this high-level stuff that could fit on one page or one or two pages.
Okay.
Now, your organizational, depending on the size of your organization, it could be 50 pages. If you're a multi-million-dollar organization and you're talking about your objectives and your goal, your very measurable objectives in each area, right? Because you're going to go into a lot of depth. But some of these high level, your vision, your mission, your strategic priorities or pillars, that should be something that, that you could post on the wall of your organization as a poster. And really, I think that, if you've built alignment around this, then it's pretty inspiring. Hey, this is what we are seeking to do every day. This is the focus of our work. So yeah.
That makes sense. Speaking of strategic priorities, you just mentioned, can you give some examples of those? A couple of people have been asking, does that read kind of like, we want to reduce hunger by 10% this year? Is that kind of an example of maybe what?
The priorities, I think it would be a little bit higher level than that. So
okay.
I was just looking at First Five, and their work was all about focusing on children, focusing on families, focusing on policy and advocacy. So and then below that, there were some more measurable objectives that were all the different kinds of groups that they were going to work with for each of those areas. Generally, you want to start with a verb, right? Create the systems to strengthen our work, build capacity, and then you start to think about how or strengthen fund development so we can expand, all of that. So the priorities are not measurable, but then you pretty quickly, once you've agreed on those priorities, you should be going into, okay, now how do we make this happen?
Got it.
Right. And by the way, you're not just throwing everything up in the air. I'm assuming that you already have a lot that is valuable, and it's really a matter of making sense of it. So if you step back and look at your work, you have pretty much every organization, you have these strategic priorities already.
That makes sense.
And you just want to, but this planning, something that's really exciting about the planning is that one of the questions that you are wrestling with is, okay, we have seen these changes, and now we notice that some new priorities are emerging.
Along the same lines, Madison was wondering how many priorities or pillars is appropriate or too many. Probably wouldn't want to have hundreds, but.
No, I think like 3 to 5.
Okay.
3 to 5. Yeah.
There you go. Easy.
Yeah, and there are tons. If you just start, looking at different organizations, many organizations do have their strategic plans online, and you can kind of do some Google searching to get a sense of the kinds of priorities. And often you'll see, when you look at an organization's strategic plan, you'll see the priorities and some more detail about the rationale and all of that. But you won't see their objectives, right? Because you're not going to see that they want to raise 500,000 and then $1 million and all of that. You're not going to get that level of detail. It's confidential, generally.
Yeah, that makes sense. From Elizabeth, I love these questions because we're getting down to brass tacks. How long is this process? Is this months long, weeks long? Matt also chimed in saying, is it kind of an ever-present process that is continual?
So I love that. So I would say, some of this depends. How much do you need to align, right? So I just worked with an organization that had a change in leadership. They had really shifted their work. We've been working together for about 6 months. And, and some of it was the process, collecting data, reflecting on the data, having some retreats to process that, communicating to others outside the strategic planning process, and then coming back. And they also, by the way, I said this at the beginning, but in terms of that capacity, organizational capacity, right? You're driving the bus and you're also changing the tire. So you're still running your organization, and then you're doing this whole other process on top of that.
Yeah.
So I would say, if you feel like you have pretty good alignment, you maybe could do it in 3 months. That would be very quick. But I would say you might want to allocate more like 6 to 9, especially if you feel that there's a lot that you're going to need to work through, and you really. This also kind of goes back to that culture of the organization. How much time do you want to reflect and think about what you've learned and see, and maybe you want to slow things down, especially if you're saying we're going to create a strategic plan for the next 3 to 5 years of our work. I mean, 5 years is kind of a long time. Now these days, I think especially we're seeing that we just see so much change that organizations are hesitant to do that, to go that far out. But then the other part of this is, I would say this is something you want to revisit, if not every month at a board meeting, then at least every quarter. And that's the whole thing. You do not want and you want to look at, are the strategies that we came up with, or even the objectives, are they working? And so it's not like this is a living document. I mean, you have to kind of keep adjusting because something might have changed again. Wow, we're in a moment of a lot of change, let's say.
Yeah, it doesn't just get shoved in a drawer and forgotten about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love Nancy just says, there's abbreviated, moderate, and extensive. Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, so you could 2 days. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that's also what I was saying in the sense of figuring out how to right size this. But I really do. No matter what, whether you are working with an outside consultant or whether this is an internal process, there is a great value to doing that reflective thinking and allowing time for that.
Yeah. Well, I love that question about engaging a consultant. I mean, is this an always you want somebody outside to come in and help, or is it that kind of a nice to have? Does it depend? What do you think?
I think it depends on the financial. An advantage that people often talk about is, first of all, if you're the ED and you're running the organization, that's the focus of your work. And anytime you bring in a consultant, you have someone else who's going to be, the project manager for this strategic, for staying in touch for this strategic planning process, and bring in their tools and process. Which, as an ED, your core work is really making sure that you're working with your staff and your clients. So, and then the other part is, if you have a facilitator, then everybody can participate in the conversation. Nobody needs, you have kind of that outside person. But some organizations, it's not financially feasible. So that's why I've been trying to say, all right, how do you right size this? And then sometimes people find somebody on their board who can do this kind of work, or pro bono, or help out with it. But again, then that person can't participate in the process in the same way. Yeah.
Well, dang, I know we didn't get to all the questions. We're about out of time, but
oh my gosh,
folks can reach out to you. That's okay.
Yeah, I would love to hear from participants if you want to talk about this further. It's exciting. As I said, I'm a strategic planning geek. So really, and just believe that we are so much better when we can hear from each other and build that alignment on a team. The work is so much stronger. And so that's what from the small to the big, tried to do in my work as a trainer, consultant, all of that, and really encourage other people to do as well, and love to, really exciting to hear that many of you are working on this. Congratulations in advance.
We all need geeks that specialize. Aww. So no problem. And you're awesome. We always love having you. So thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Stephen. My pleasure.
And thanks to all of you for hanging out. I think we had, over 300 people or something like that. So that was awesome to see. I so appreciate all of you. I hope you're all doing okay. You're staying healthy, staying safe. We got some cool sessions coming up over the next few weeks. I'm just going to grab the screen away here real quick, Renee. Okay. But go next week, our buddy Marianne Dersh from St. Louis, she's going to come in and give what's going to be a really fun pep talk. If you struggle with maybe being persuasive, getting your ideas across, kind of vocalizing your opinion on things, I struggle with that. I'm going to be listening very intently to this session. That's what we're going to talk about. Marianne's awesome. has done webinars for us in the past and is all over the place speaking. So that's going to be a fun session next week, 2 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. Totally free. We'll record it. If you can't make it, register anyway, because you'll get the recording. So no problem there if you don't attend live. That's okay. But hopefully we'll see you on that session. If not, register. There's other webinars that you can check out there. Lots of cool topics. And we will send you the recording of this presentation later on today. So be on the lookout for that. And hopefully we'll see you again next week. So we'll call it a day there. Definitely
thanks
connect
so much.
with Renee. Yeah, thank you. This was awesome. Have a good rest of your Thursday. Have a good weekend. Stay safe. And we'll talk to you again soon. See ya.
All right.
Bye.